what if the reason you stop making gains at the gym has like absolutely nothing to do with your muscles?
Right. Which sounds crazy at first.
Yeah. Like what if
Mm.
your body isn't actually physically exhausted?
Right.
What if it's just, profoundly neurochemically bored?
It sounds almost like an excuse when you first hear it, doesn't it? I mean, we're so conditioned to believe that a fitness plateau is, well, basically a moral failing.
Oh, totally. We blame our work ethic.
Exactly. We tell ourselves we just lack willpower or, we aren't grinding hard enough. But from a biological perspective,
Yeah.
trying to solve a plateau with sheer force is just a massive misunderstanding of how the human organism is actually wired to learn and adapt.
Right. So we're basically just beating ourselves up for no reason. But today, we're unpacking a framework that flips that entire narrative completely upside down.
It really does.
We're taking a deep dive into the Israeli Science and Art of Integrity, or ISAI, which was developed by Monya Gorlick. It's this fascinating system that argues we've completely lost touch with our biology's original source code.
We really have.
So we're going to explore how replacing artificial discipline with, like, inborn instinctive movement patterns might fundamentally change the way you build strength, repair your body, and honestly just navigate your daily life. Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
Because to fix the plateau, we have to start by understanding exactly why your brain checks out of your workout routine in the first place, right?
Yeah, and to understand that boredom, we really have to look at a concept known as search activity. It was originally explored by researchers V.S. Rotenberg and V. Adler-Shafsky.
Okay, search activity.
Right. So think about the very first time you attempt a complex physical task, maybe as a new martial arts strike or learning to correctly perform a heavy barbell deadlift.
Oh man, yeah, you're just trying not to hurt yourself.
Exactly. You are stepping into an environment of total uncertainty. Your nervous system doesn't know the exact timing. It doesn't know the balance point.
It has no idea what it's doing.
Right, and it doesn't know how the load is going to feel. So you're actively searching for the solution in real time, making 100 tiny calculations every single second.
So it's essentially a physical puzzle.
It is, and the brain absolutely thrives on that investigation. When you actively search and navigate that uncertainty, your brain delivers a massive neurochemical reward.
Like dopamine.
Heavily driven by dopamine pathways, yes. And, dopamine is often oversimplified as just a pleasure chemical, but it's really the chemical of motivation and prediction error.
Prediction error.
Yeah, so you attempt a movement, your body gives you sensory feedback, your brain updates its prediction of what will happen next, and you get a powerful biological reward for learning.
Oh, wow. That makes sense.
That's why the first few weeks of a new routine feel so electric, The movement is actually alive.
It's exactly like playing a new video game.
Yeah.
Like the first time you encounter a really difficult boss level, your brain just lights up.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
You're analyzing the patterns, you finally beat it, and you get this huge rush of satisfaction.
Yeah.
But if you try grinding that exact same level 100 more times, just to like farm some artificial
It
points,
gets old fast.
yeah, that feels like a tedious job. The thrill is totally gone.
That's actually a really helpful parallel, but we need to look at what's happening in the physical body when you grind that level. The physiological equivalent is a concept from N.A. Bernstein called repetition without repetition.
Okay, repetition without repetition. What does that mean?
So as you practice a squat or a punch over and over, the movement becomes standardized. Now your body's always making micro adjustments. You never perform the exact same movement twice down to the millimeter.
Sure.
But the overarching uncertainty just vanishes. You know exactly what a heavy squat feels like. The puzzle is solved.
And because the puzzle is solved, the search activity just completely shuts down.
Right, and the biological reward disappears with it. You haven't lost your technical ability to lift the weight. You've just lost the neurochemical fuel that made the movement inherently rewarding.
Wow.
That right there is the hidden anatomy of the fitness plateau.
Okay, I hear you, but let me push back on this a little bit.
Sure.
Isn't discipline the entire point of physical training? I mean, if we only ever do hard things when our brain gives us a fun little dopamine hit, aren't we just catering to laziness?
That's the common argument, yeah.
Because pushing through the boredom is how champions are made, right? Like you have to grind.
I completely understand that perspective. And, no one is arguing that discipline is inherently bad. But relying solely on forced discipline when your biology is actively signaling boredom, that is highly inefficient.
Inefficient how?
Well, when the reward of search activity drops off and you try to brute force your way through a workout using sheer willpower, You fundamentally shift your body's neuroendocrine state.
So you're changing your actual chemistry.
Exactly. You move away from a state of reward-driven adaptation, and you plunge into stress-driven effort. You aren't just burning energy anymore.
What do you mean? Wait.
You are actively generating stress hormones like cortisol, which can actually inhibit optimal muscle repair and neuromuscular learning. You're basically fighting your own biology at that point.
So you are basically redlining your body's stress system to do something your brain has already classified as a waste of energy.
Exactly.
And I'm guessing this is why people at the gym suddenly start doing those bizarre, overly complicated exercises to cure their boredom, like the circus tricks.
Yes, and that is precisely the trap. When the plateau hits, people desperately chase that search activity dopamine rush by adding random novelty.
Right, they'll start doing like squats while balancing on a Bosu ball while juggling kettlebells.
Exactly. But introducing random novelty creates a severe problem known as the negative transfer of training.
Negative transfer, meaning that the new weird exercise actually sabotages your main goal.
Correct. Let's stick with your Bosu ball squat example. You get a thrill because, hey, it's a new balancing puzzle.
Right, you're trying not to fall on your face.
But the neurological firing pattern required to keep you from falling off a squishy rubber ball is completely different from the firing pattern required to drive maximum force into the ground for a heavy, stable barbell squat.
Oh, man. Never thought about that.
So by chasing a cheap dopamine hit, you are literally degrading the specific neural pathways of your primary skill. You physically confuse your body.
Okay, so chasing external novelty just gives us messy, conflicting workout routines. So the solution isn't finding a newer, crazier exercise. It has to come from somewhere else.
It has to come from the inside. And this is the genius of the ISAI framework. Instead of relying on the fading reward of learning artificial gym exercises, we have to tap into a permanent biological reward system.
And what is that?
We have to utilize inborn movement patterns, or IMP.
The biological source code.
Exactly. These are instinctive movement programs hardwired right into the human nervous system. And the two primary ones utilized in ISAI are yawning and pandiculation.
Okay, wait. Now, when you say yawning, most people just think of like being tired in a really boring meeting and taking a big gulp of air.
Right, a polite little sigh.
Yeah. But we aren't just talking about breathing here, are we?
Far from it. In this framework, a true yawn is a systemic, whole-body event. It's not just respiratory at all.
So what else is involved?
It involves the specific tension of the mouth, the deliberate opening of the glottis, which is the valve in your throat that controls airflow, and the recruitment of the chest, shoulder, spine, and the autonomic nervous system.
That is intense.
It is. When you fully open the glottis during an organic yawn, it actually sends a powerful signal via the vagus nerve to drop defensive fight-or-flight tension.
Wow. And then there's pandiculation, which, if you've never heard that word, you've definitely seen.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, if you've ever watched a dog or a cat wake up from a nap, they do that deep, vibrating, full-body stretch. They arch their back, extend their front legs. Their muscles actually tremble with the intensity of it.
Yes.
And then they completely release.
Ah.
So that wave-like action of tensing, expanding, and releasing, that is pandiculation.
What's fascinating here is that animals use pandiculation to maintain what we call myofascial integrity.
Okay, myofascial integrity.
The fascia is the continuous web of connective tissue that wraps around every single muscle and organ in the body. When an animal lies still, that web gets sticky and tight.
Just like when we sit at a desk all day.
Exactly. Pandiculation is the biological mechanism to wring out that tension, recalibrate the nervous system, and reset the resting length of the muscles. And crucially, because this pattern is a fundamental maintenance mechanism for survival, its biological reward is permanent. Your dog never gets bored of stretching.
Oh, wow. That's so true.
The reward doesn't fade with repetition like a gym routine does. It's built in.
Okay, I'm totally on board with the dog stretch. That makes perfect sense. But how do we bridge the gap between an animal waking up from a nap and me wanting to build actual functional human strength?
Right, the practical application.
Because I can't just yawn on my way to a stronger back, right? Like, how do we trigger this on command without just awkwardly faking it?
And that is the core challenge. You can't just mechanically open your jaw, pretend to stretch, and expect a physiological reset.
You just look silly.
Yeah, faking a yawn just gives you a sore jaw. To access the inborn pattern, ISAI utilizes a concept called physical coloring.
Okay, physical coloring.
which actually has its roots in Russian theatrical training, specifically Michael Chekhov's acting techniques.
Oh, the term akroska, right.
Yes, okraska. In elite theater, an actor doesn't just squeeze their face and try to manufacture sadness out of thin air.
Right, that looks totally fake.
Instead, they organize their physical condition, like the heaviness of their posture, the rhythm of their breath. And that specific physical organization evokes the genuine emotion organically. ISAI applies this exact principle to our biology.
So it's like setting up dominoes.
That's a great way to put it.
You aren't forcing the final domino to fall. You're organizing the physical posture, adjusting the tilt of the pelvis, changing the tension in the chest, opening the glottis in a specific way until the body recognizes the conditions.
Yes.
The body says, oh, we're doing the yawning pattern. And then the biology takes over and knocks the rest of the dominoes down for you.
Exactly.
You evoke the pattern rather than imitating it.
That is exactly how it works. And when you successfully evoke that inborn pattern, you experience what ISAI terms the pleasure flash.
So the pleasure flash. Sounds pretty good.
It is a profound, incredibly distinct psychophysical experience. You feel a sudden, intense reduction in internal friction, a wave of clarity, and a deep sense of biological rightness.
It's that full body feeling, but like amplified.
Amplified, exactly.
And I want to dig into the timing of this because it often peaks at what is called the still point.
Right, the still point.
Which is this naturally occurring microscopic pause right at the peak of a breath cycle.
Yeah.
Like you take a breath in, and before you exhale, there is a tiny moment where the physical urge to breathe just goes perfectly quiet.
Yes.
You aren't forcefully holding your breath. The system is just suspended in balance. And in that silent still point, the pleasure flash peaks.
And if we connect this to the underlying chemistry, that still point isn't just a subjective feeling. It is the peak of a highly synchronized neurochemical cascade.
Okay, tell me more.
When you hit that pleasure flash through physical coloring, you aren't just getting a generic endorphin rush. You are triggering a very specific sequence.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Break down that chemical sequence for me because it is so incredibly precise. Like, how does a simple stretch trigger all of this?
Well, it starts with the sheer physical force of the stretch. As you expand and tense the tissue, it signals the vascular system to release nitric oxide, which dilates your blood vessels and wakes the entire system up.
Wow, okay.
Simultaneously, dopamine pathways activate, providing that intense motivation and focus we talked about earlier. Then, as you hit the still point and begin the release phase, the body deploys beta endorphins to dramatically lower internal friction and pain.
And what about the feeling of calm? Because, you know, a heavy gym lift usually makes me feel aggressive, not calm.
That's the oxytocin pathway. Evoking an inborn pattern signals to the deep brain that you are biologically safe, which immediately drops your anxiety levels. But perhaps the most crucial element for actual strength training is IGF-1.
Insulin-like growth factor 1.
Exactly.
Okay, I need to know how that works.
Mhm.
I thought you had to rip muscle fibers with heavy weights to get them to grow. How does a yawning stretch trigger a growth hormone?
Right, so that's the traditional mechanical damage model. But the high-intensity systemic tension of an inborn pattern creates a different type of mechanical signaling altogether.
Interesting.
When you put that much controlled wave-like tension through the myofascial web, the cells respond to that precise physical load by releasing IGF-1. This promotes tissue repair and increases structural density.
Without the damage.
Exactly, without requiring you to cause microtears and heavy, painful inflammation first.
Okay, so we've basically hacked the system. We use physical coloring to set up the dominoes. We hit the still point. We ride the pleasure flash, and we get this massive cascade of nitric oxide, endorphins, and IGF-1.
That is the formula.
But let's get incredibly practical here. How do I actually work out using this, like day to day?
You do it through something called quasimetric contraction.
Quasimetric.
Yeah, so in traditional training, you have dynamic movements like doing a push-up, and you have isometric movements like holding a rigid plank. Quasimetrics sit in a different category entirely. It is high-intensity muscle activation with very slow, very small, naturally variable movement. It is not static.
It's that wave-like tremble the dog gets when it stretches. It's vibrating with tension, but it's not locked in place.
Precisely. The tension breathes. And rather than going to a gym to do this for one exhausting, sweaty hour, ISAI utilizes often nano training.
Often nano.
Yes. Nano means the duration of the training pulse is incredibly short. Just the length of that stretch and pleasure flash. Oft means you repeat these short pulses frequently throughout the day.
So let's visualize this. I'm sitting at my desk at work. I've got a spreadsheet open. I'm feeling super stiff.
We've all been there.
Right. Instead of feeling guilty that I'm going to skip the gym later, what does an off-nano pulse actually look like in my office chair?
Well, first, you don't just randomly flex your muscles. That just creates more stress. You start with physical coloring.
Setting up the dominoes.
Exactly. You adjust your posture, expand the chest, and open the glottis to evoke the yawning pattern. As the body recognizes the pattern, you apply the quasimetric tension.
Okay, so what am I doing physically?
You actively contract your core, drive your feet into the floor, and pull your shoulder blades down with immense, slow intensity. Your muscles will actually begin to tremble as you ride that wave of tension.
Right.
You hold that deep, vibrating effort for maybe 5 or 6 seconds, hit your still point, absorb the pleasure flash, and then completely release.
And doing those micro doses of intense tension throughout the day can actually replace a traditional workout.
Really. It requires a total paradigm shift.
Oh.
You're moving from a goal of exhaustion to a goal of frequent structural stimulation.
That's wild.
Now, it's important to differentiate how you apply this. There is non-N training, which stands for natural off-nano. That's what you just described at your desk. Pure pandiculation and yawning patterns. But there is also on training.
Okay, how does on training differ?
On trainings is taking that inborn biological state and applying it to a specific artificial skill. Say you're a golfer or a martial artist.
Sure.
You can design a specific quasimetric exercise for your golf swing or your punch. You apply the exact same high-intensity, slow, wave-like tension to the mechanics of your sport.
Wow.
But the golden rule is that it must be rooted in the feeling of natural movement. If you lose the pleasure flash, if you lose the inborn reward, it just degrades back into a stressful, plateau-inducing exercise.
So you have to maintain the biological joy of the stretch, even while practicing like a deadly martial arts strike.
Exactly.
That is wild. So let's say we commit to this. We do these off nanopulses every day. We stimulate our structure without destroying it. What actually happens to the human body long term?
We aim for profound morphological adaptation. We are talking about fundamentally changing the density, elasticity, and conductive quality of the tissue.
So getting beyond just looking buff.
Right. In standard fitness, the goal is usually hypertrophy, which is making your existing muscle fibers thicker. It's like blowing more air into a balloon. But ISAI also explores the potential for hyperplasia.
And hyperplasia is entirely different. That's not blowing up the balloon. That is generating completely new balloons, right? Increasing the actual number of muscle fibers.
Yes. And while hyperplasia in humans via training is still a debated working hypothesis in mainstream sports science, the practical, observable results of frequent, high-intensity natural stimulation are just undeniable.
The physical quality of the body literally changes.
It does, but building that new strength is really only half the equation. You have to stabilize it using PIR, or post-isometric relaxation.
Meaning that immediately after you do that intense desk stretch, your nervous system actually drops its background tension.
Yeah.
You end up more relaxed than before you flexed.
Exactly. Over time, this trains your nervous system to rest at what we call MDR, maximum dynamic relaxation.
I love the explanation of MDR because it is not limpness. It's not walking around like a wet noodle.
No, not at all.
It is the exact optimal living tonus required for an action, and absolutely no more. It's like having your car idling at the perfect RPM.
That's a great analogy.
You aren't revving the engine wildly at a red light, wasting fuel and wearing out the gears, but you also aren't stalled out. You are just perfectly, quietly humming, ready to hit the gas the millisecond the light turns green.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, achieving that MDR baseline allows for something called global training.
Global training.
The artificial wall between working out and living your life completely dissolves.
Oh, wow.
Every time you stand up from a chair, every time you reach for a glass on a high shelf, you are moving from a place of inborn movement. Life itself becomes a continuous regenerative training field.
That is incredibly freeing. Just living is the workout.
Yeah.
But there is a final exam for all of this, isn't there? The ultimate reality test, high-speed chaos.
Yes, high-speed chaos.
Because it's one thing to have perfect, beautiful movement when you're slowly stretching in your office. It is an entirely different universe when you slip on an icy sidewalk, or you're in a high-speed sport, or a sudden accident.
And this is exactly where traditional standardized gym training shatters. Conscious choreography is simply too slow.
Cool.
If you start slipping on the ice and you have to consciously think, okay, engage the core, shift my center of gravity, extend my arm, you have already hit the ground. Under speed, surprise, and the massive chemical dump of adrenaline, conscious control collapses.
You can't rely on the speed of learned thought. You have to move at the speed of instinct.
Precisely. If your physical technique contradicts your natural biology, it will fail under pressure. But if your structure has been remodeled by inborn movement patterns, if you are fueled by the pleasure flash and idling perfectly at maximum dynamic
I'm
relaxation,
ready for anything.
you can survive high-speed chaos.
Yeah.
Because your body isn't trying to remember an artificial rule book, it is simply expressing its own unobstructed biological nature.
Unobstructed strength and flow. What an amazing place to land. So let's do a quick recap of the journey we just took.
Sure.
We started with the frustration of the gym plateau and realized it's actually a neurochemical trap caused by a lack of search activity and prediction error.
Right.
Instead of adding random, confusing exercises that caused negative transfer, we tapped into the body's source code, the inborn movement patterns of yawning and pandiculation.
The biological foundation.
We learned how to evoke those patterns by setting up the physical dominoes with physical coloring, triggering the still point, and a massive cascade of repair chemicals like IGF-1.
Exactly.
And finally, we discovered how microdosing that tension through off-nano quasimetrics can rebuild our physical baseline, preparing us for high-speed chaos without ever burning ourselves out.
It truly is a system of subtraction. It's about removing the artificial noise so your biology can do what it was perfected over millions of years to do.
That's beautiful.
And, this raises a paradigm-shifting question for anyone listening.
Lay it on us.
If our bodies are fundamentally designed to crave high-intensity movement, structural stimulation, and neurochemical release frequently throughout the entire day, what if the modern invention of the 1-hour gym session isn't actually a cure for our sedentary lives? What if forcing all our physical effort into one exhausted, compartmentalized hour is actually a symptom of how deeply we've forgotten our own nature?
That is a completely wild thought to sit with. So if you're listening to this, here's your homework. Tomorrow morning, when you first wake up, don't just instantly grab your phone and start stressing about your email.
Oh, please don't.
Take 10 seconds to pay absolute attention to that very first instinctive stretch. Feel the wave of tension, the trembling expansion, and the complete release.
Really observe the mechanics of it.
Yeah, and realize that what you are experiencing isn't just a random reflex. It is a highly evolved biological superpower, just waiting to be harnessed. Maybe it's time to stop grinding the same artificial level and start listening to the code. Until next time.